All right, so awareness, right? What does awareness have to do with you? That's the question I want to start with today. And you're going to need a partner, so look to your left and look to your right. And if there's nobody on your left or right, then obviously go with the person that you have by you. But to get the most out of our 50-ish minutes together, you'll want to have someone to talk out loud with about some of this stuff. And so let's start with that question. What does awareness have to do with you? What does awareness even mean, and how does it relate to you? So take about 60 seconds and just entertain that question with your partner. What David didn't mention in my intro is that I am a left brain dominant perfectionist that is learning to enjoy this journey of life. And so awareness for me has been a critical piece to integrating more and more of myself. So awareness has been what has helped me hold that kind of high-achieving perfectionist piece of myself gently. Because for a long time, I was gripped tightly on it. And when I was gripped tightly on that part of myself, it didn't allow space for things like the playful me to come out, the relaxed part of me to come out, which sometimes the piece over here still calls it the lazy part of me, but that's okay. Sometimes it's good to be lazy. So when I think of awareness, this is the picture that I get. I think of a sunrise. So I think of how, in many ways, a sunrise is a good illustration for me of awareness. For one thing, it's regular. I mean, it happens consistently, just like awareness. I can count on it. I'm learning slowly to trust it, that it will happen over and over, right? And then also with awareness and the sunrise, things start out dark, kind of nondescript. Sometimes it's unclear. You can't put your finger on things. But as the sun rises and light hits things, just like when awareness hits things, you begin to see forms. You begin to see shapes and edges. You begin to see beauty. And you also see the dust on the coffee table. Okay, let's be honest. You see the dust on the coffee table when the sun comes up. You see all the fingerprints on the mirror, on the windows. So awareness holds a lot for us. And I think that that's a good image, and we can actually emulate that in our body. So I would like to try that. It's after lunch, so you may need some physical attention. You just had a rich lunch. And so let's do that together. We're going to use this visualization of a sunrise as kind of a body scan, okay? So take a minute and get kind of comfortable in your chair, kind of shift around if you need to find a comfortable position, all right? You had a break from the room, so you come adjust to like the temperature in this room. And then again, when you're comfortable, and if you're comfortable with it, close your eyes. Close your eyes. And for those of you that aren't really comfortable in a group of people closing your eyes, that's fine. Find a spot right in front of you. So find a spot on the table or in your lap or on the floor, and gently fixate on that spot, just gently. And give yourself a minute to just adjust to that. And then I want to use this image of a sunrise. Just begin to kind of, in your mind's eye, imagine the horizon before the sun peeks out. There's a little bit of light. And imagine that image resting right above your head. And then begin to see the light peek out. And imagine that light shining on just the crown of your head. And notice, we're going to use noticing as kind of the light in us. And notice the crown of your head. And then let the light move down a little bit to right behind your eyes. Notice right behind your eyes. Then let that light and let your noticing move down to your jaw. And just notice if it's tense, if it's shivering from the cold. Simply notice. And then let that light, that noticing, move down to your shoulders. And again, just notice what's there. Let it drop down into your chest, your lower back, let your light go down a little bit further into your seat. Let your noticing drop down into your knees, and then to your ankles. Finally, letting the light and your noticing go right out through your toes. And when you're ready, open your eyes, come back, and take just a second, and it's okay, we can rest in that for just a minute, just in that spot. How was that for you? Anybody want to vocalize how that was? Relaxing. Mm-hmm. I was a little leery about doing that after lunch. You've just eaten. If anybody needs to sleep for a second, that's okay. I won't take it personally. Good. Well, so here's our map for our time together. We're going to start with why awareness is important, what awareness is, and how we can position ourselves to be at the ready for when awareness comes knocking. So why awareness? I mean, I alluded to that, and you kind of came up with some reasons. What did you talk about with your partner? Why is awareness important to you? So noticing if people are even getting what you're saying. We heard a lot about that this morning in the way of communication and things like that, being aware of if people are even picking up what we're putting down, right? Right, and I alluded to awareness being so important to me because it really has helped me become more grounded. Becoming more aware has helped me really choose things in my life that have led to more fulfillment and joy. And I think awareness is something, emotional intelligence has been all over the place this morning. We've, talked a lot about that. And I think awareness is that hinge piece that really helps managers become leaders. Awareness goes a little bit underneath the surface, and it's hugely impactful. All right, so here's what I believe. Creativity, innovation, and freedom are all born out of awareness. And it's 60-second awareness, that's the name of it, because I believe that in every moment, every minute, there's opportunity. Just like that sunrise. I mean, every moment there's opportunity to be more and more aware of yourself and others. So what is awareness? What is awareness? I mean, this is kind of tricky because awareness is one of those things like love or the color green. I mean, how you experience it is different than how I experience it. Your awareness is going to be different than mine. And we can't create it necessarily. It's not something we can manufacture. We can't force it or demand it. I've tried. It doesn't work very well. But I think there are practices, there's skills we can develop that lead to kind of a posture to be open to awareness. And many of the things mentioned this morning, right? Many of the things that Eric and Laura and Andy talked about really are born out of these skills of paying attention. Okay, so first of all, as project managers, these are some natural gifts that you have. paying attention. It is critical to notice the details, to be aware of what's going on. I mean, that's what makes a good project manager. 2, practicing different perspectives, right? It's part of your job to kind of put on different hats. How is this going to be perceived? How's that going to be perceived? How do I communicate that? I mean, you're natural at this skill, right? And they can be developed. And then being open to a shift, right? Part of the planning and the preparation is so that when the unexpected comes, which it will, we're ready. We've kind of thought through, okay, if this falls apart or that falls apart. And so we're already in a problem-solving mode, right? So these are some natural skills that you already have that you can hone and develop so that you're more and more aware and really paying attention to when opportunity presents itself. Now, I'm going to be transparent. There's an underbelly side to these that I discovered fumbling along the way. And those things, too, have been alluded to in the previous presentations. One is judgment. So for many, many years, that high-achieving perfectionist part of myself was so quick when I would pay attention and notice something, was quick to put it in one of 2 cups, good or bad, right or wrong, right? And I was really good at it. I was really good at deciding quickly if it was good or bad, right or wrong. And so although I was paying attention, it was only with a critical eye. And then practicing the different perspectives, because I was so limited in my seeing, because I wasn't practicing curiosity, then it really limited how many perspectives I could see from. And so incorporating curiosity, taking a moment to ask questions and wonder instead of knowing right away, has expanded these things for me. And then being open to a shift. I loved Andy's scarf model. I hadn't heard, has anybody heard of that before? So the one that I remember is the C, the certainty piece, because that's what the judgment did for me. It made things certain, right? And so letting go slowly from certainty and leaning into not knowing and even shifting some of that perfection into good enough opened up these parts of awareness for me. So then when it got to be open to a shift, I realized there are uncertainties in life. There are some things that are certain, like I can control my response. I mean, that's what Eric was talking to. I love, we'll talk a little bit about his ERIC. I love that. So these are the parts of awareness, I feel like. And the whole idea, I love this picture. This is me usually on Monday morning. Or by Sunday afternoon at least. So I really believe that awareness helps us shift from this position. I mean, this guy, this is not just his face. Like something is also going on inside of him. And I think awareness can help us make this shift. And so the sunrise body scan, something that simple can help us shift what's going on inside of us. Eric mentioned about being angry, when anger rises up, and it happens, again, for different reasons for each of us. But really acknowledging that anger instead of stuffing it down. Okay, so that's the idea. Another little mindfulness exercise for you. And we're moving into now the how of awareness. How do we be more aware? So I think emotional intelligence, if we boil it down, emotional intelligence is a huge topic. And sometimes it's very academic how people talk about it. But to me, it kind of boils down to 2 things. One is awareness of yourself, awareness of other people, And then the other part is how you manage that awareness, what you do with the awareness, how you respond to it. Those are really the two big pieces of emotional intelligence. And I believe that what mindfulness does is you have a little gap between stimulus and response. You have a little gap between getting angry and how you respond to that anger. And that's what I think mindfulness does, is help grow that gap space in between stimulus and response. So another really quick mindfulness practice for you. I was on a call with Frank and our sales guy a few weeks ago, and they were talking about how they needed to get time away, and they were like, I'm gonna plan a weekend. I need a weekend of time to get away, and they're like moving like this. Oh, momentum is another thing. Momentum, oh my gosh, we can get in it reminds me of the conflict spiral. We can just tumble into momentum and then we can't ever stop. But anyways, that's how it was sounding to me, and I was like, okay guys, hold on for just a second. Let's just put your finger and thumb together for just a minute and take a break right now. And this is something you can do before you go into that moment of conflict where you're like, I'm gonna have to talk to this person. I can't go to the bathroom every time they come near my office. I have to actually talk to this person. This is an easy exercise to just tune you into yourself. Awareness is not just emotional. Awareness is body, it's physical, it's mental, it's all parts of us that awareness touches. So let's do this together. Forefinger and thumb. You can do one or both, however you want to do it. And then begin to put all of your attention just right into that touch, just the touch between your finger and your thumb. Imagine your breath going into that spot. Maybe even push on your thumb with your forefinger, noticing how that feels. And then do the opposite. Push on your pointer with your thumb. So take just a second with your partner. Take about 60 seconds, actually. And I want you to talk about mindfulness. What comes to mind? What are some hindrances you have with mindfulness? Just how is this striking you? Mindfulness as a way to grow our awareness. So take about 60 seconds and share with your partner. So as an experienced project manager, I thought it would be good to give you the things that can screw this up. Because we all want to know, what's going to get in our way? How do we avoid the pitfalls, right? And this is where I always go, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Has anybody heard if there's any organizational psych or psych people? So, it's interesting. We want people, and people come to us saying, I need you to be more creative and innovative. And if I'm at home and I have 2 kids with the flu, I have limited creativity right now, just FYI. So I think it's important to know that, do you see where creativity and problem solving, they're at the top. So if you are not eating and sleeping, if you're not feeling secure in your health, that your roof's not gonna fall in, if you're not having some sense of intimacy in life with friends or family, you're gonna have a limited ability to notice, to become more aware. And this is fluctuating, right? Awareness is not one of those things like, I've arrived at awareness. I'm 100% aware right now. It's not. It's a journey, right? It's growing. Once you're aware of one piece of you, that shines the light on another piece that is a whole nother can of worms. So it's like an ebb and flow. It's a journey. So I thought it would be good to take this. So do you see how there's kind of levels? These are kind of our circles, not, Some people never get that sense of security in life. They never find that sense of security, and so they're always kind of limited. So take a minute and tease this out with your partner. I thought if you rated yourself first on 1 to 5, so 1 being this need is not fulfilled at all, and 5 being this need is highly fulfilled, rate yourself on these levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So talk it out with your partner. Sometimes it's harder to see for ourselves. Yeah, that's why it's nice to have a partner to talk this out with. So take each of these and kind of rate yourself 1 to 5, and then think about that person that maybe it's that person that you know is always a conflict. And what do you know of them? Where are they in this hierarchy of needs? So let's take just a few minutes and talk this out with your partners. Okay, so there are lots of hows when it comes to positioning yourself for awareness. So again, awareness, it's something like love where it just happens, and we can either see it or we cannot see it. And there's lots of hows. Lots of how we position ourselves to become more aware. But the one practice, pattern interruption is a wonderful way to really position yourself for awareness. And the one kind of practice of pattern interruption that I want to drill down into right now is the practice of gratitude. I think gratitude incorporates those 3 parts of awareness: paying attention, practicing a different perspective, and being open to a shift. I think that the practice of gratitude is really weaves all of those together. So I mentioned my eye of judgment was really strong. My mom was, awesome at it. And so I too became really awesome at it. And so seeing the good first was really a challenge. And so has anybody ever done the take a word for the year, like an intention for the year? So one year, and this might have been actually the first year I took a word, the word was beauty. Because I realized that I struggled to see beauty at all. I definitely didn't see it first. And so taking that word, it's always amazing when you choose that word, what happens, because many times it's surprising. You choose it because you kind of have a plan of how that's going to unfold, and it doesn't really go like that. So gratitude, the practice of gratitude. So what I'd like you to do, and you can do this just with yourself, I want you to start a list right now. So we're going to take just about 30 seconds. And as many things that you can write down, so get your pen, get your paper, and I want you to write down as many things that you're grateful for as you can, just in the next few seconds. Next up, I would like to talk about where awareness lives, like the opportunistic place for awareness. And I can't remember who alluded, was it Andy or Laura? I can't remember which speaker this morning alluded to a gap. And I find the gap spaces in our life there's huge opportunity for awareness. It's like that's the address of awareness if you're going to find it. And so I think that we can do a better job. I think that's why mindfulness is important. Mindfulness helps us do a better job in that gap space, paying attention, and being open to what we see instead of instantly judging it. And so my favorite gap space is the gap between what we hear and it's this listening gap that we have. Okay, so how many words per minute do you think people speak on average? We are in the South, but how many? If you were just to guess, how many words per minute do you think on average do we speak? What, did I hear 80? Say a little bit louder. 130? 150, 100? So it's anywhere between 150 to 200. It's in that range, depending on if you live in the South or not. Now, how many words per minute do you think that our brains can take in any given moment? How many words per minute are our brains looking for? So, say again? 400? 50? So you're right on track. It's about 4 times how fast we speak. Like, to me, I was shocked. That is a huge gap space. Now, going back to Andy's thing, where words are 7% of what we're taking in, we do fill in that gap with noticing other things. But what I think we tend to do is mindlessly notice. We don't take advantage to that for that gap space. I mean, you might already be noticing right now that you're doing other things in your head and I'm talking slow. So I want you to real time do this with your partner. So share a high, let's see, today is, I have no idea what today is, Tuesday? Thank you. So over the weekend, with your partner, I want you to share a high or a low from the weekend. Just something that comes up. But the one that's listening, what I want you to do is really notice, what are you doing? Maybe not so much pay attention to what they're saying, but what are you doing in that gap space of what they're talking about and what you're filling in with? So let's take about 60 seconds. So each take about 60 seconds to share and notice what you're doing in that listening gap. Go ahead. This must be a really positive group of people because the energy in the room just went up like 25%. So most of you must have been sharing a high from the weekend or something funny and not a low because that would have been different energy. So did you notice? Raise your hand if you noticed your own gap space and what was happening. So I spent a few years in a program that honed in on just that I became more and more aware of what I was doing in that gap space. And the amazing thing is it seems so counterintuitive. So much of what we talk about is, I think especially in the listening world, like if you ever have a class on listening, it's usually active listening, which is about noticing the other person. It's, again, paying attention to body language and all those things. But I've found, through my experience, that listening to myself and that gap actually helps me listen better because I'm just more aware of what I'm listening through, expectations, and what I've noticed. I mean, when that sunrise thing, what I notice when the awareness comes many times is instantly what I can fix. So when I'm listening to people, what I noticed was one of the first things I wanted to do was fix it. How can I fix it? Which back to in the vase thing that Eric talked about, right? Acknowledging somebody's position before jumping to solve. I mean, that sounds so easy. I mean, it sounds like I should just be able to do that. But it is not that easy to do. And the more heated, the more invested you have in the conversation, the harder it is to stop and acknowledge rather than jump right into solving. So the management of it is easy to talk about. The awareness piece and the doing it differently is hard. It's hard work, and it takes a lot of effort and energy. So the gap space, one of my favorite things, and there's lots of gap spaces. There's not just the listening gap. There's the gap of where we are and where we want to be. There's the gap of today and tomorrow. There's the gap of my youngest is 5 and she's not graduating high school for a really long time. So there's lots of gaps, right? I took on some new values this year. So my previous values were family, mindfulness, and meaningful work. My new values this year, we had a program, and I was inspired by some of the folks in the program. And my new values are awareness, integration, and freedom. So I chose those values because I feel like there's a good learning gap in between those values and where I am right now. So gap spaces are all over, like the sunrise. They're always there. You can count on them. It's learning to trust them and notice them. And I think that's what mindfulness does, is slow us down so that we can really notice those gap spaces. And so something I want to throw out, Socratic method. Has everybody heard? Anybody want to define Socratic method? Learning by asking thoughtful questions. Beautiful. And so what if you applied Socratic method to your gap spaces? So in this listening one, in this listening gap, wondering where am I listening from? Where am I listening from right now? Am I listening from that conflict situation that I just walked out of? Am I listening from my family of origin? Am I listening from that award I just got yesterday? I mean, where am I listening from, and what am I listening for? So am I listening to fix? Am I listening to rescue or resolve? Am I listening to prove my point? I mean, is that what I'm actually listening to? It's how I can counter and debate. How many of you found yourself in the gap thinking of questions to ask? Anybody found it? Yeah, I know, really. So there's lots of, applying that Socratic method to these gap spaces can invite awareness. It really invites awareness to come along and show you some things. So some things that you may find in the gap space. Now what I have found, checking my time, what I have found is that many people, well, this was true for myself, and some people have said it's been true for them too, that slowing down and noticing these gaps, sometimes we're busy for a reason. We're busy because we're avoiding the quiet. We're busy because we're proving ourselves. So we don't notice the gap spaces for a reason. And so that's maybe the first place to be curious, is why am I avoiding slowing down? I had a good friend, I don't know, it's probably 5 years ago, and he said, he was one of these loud, relaxed people. And he said, you are just too busy. You say yes to too much. I really just wanted to punch him in the throat. I mean, seriously, but I loved him enough, and he supported me, and I trusted him. And it made me think, what the heck is going on? I am too busy, and I still struggle with it today, and I can tell when I'm ramping up, when that momentum is rising, and I'm doing more and more. And now I've learned I can be a little bit more curious instead of yelling and critiquing at myself. I can be a little more curious about what's going on. What am I avoiding? What's in this gap that I really don't want to see? You know, right? Is it the dust on the coffee table, or is it something a little more serious? So things that you may find in your gap space. Feelings. Frank's going to dive into this a little bit more later. But you may find feelings. Eric mentioned anger, joy, sadness. Things, your feelings live in the gap spaces, and it gets harder and harder to shove those down sometimes. They need to be acknowledged. So that vase thing, you can do that for yourself. That would be a wonderful tool, a reflective tool to do for yourself to increase your self-awareness. Motivators. In the gap space, man, what drives your behavior lives in the gap, right? Is it fun? I mean, there's lots of personality things that kind of go to your core motivators. So, like I'm an ENF, am I F? I don't know. Anyways, there's Myers-Briggs, there's the people code, there's all sorts of different things that tap into what motivates us. And you can begin to pay attention to those things in the gap space. So take just a second. We'll actually take a couple minutes with your partner. And I want you to talk about two things. One, what in our last 50 minutes together or so, what's sticking with you? What's still rattling around in your gap space? And two, what's one thing that you can take out? What's one thing, one practice you can take to really invite awareness into your everyday, every moment life? So one thing that's rattling around and one thing you can take away from this and practice today. So take a few minutes with your partner. All right. You guys have been awesome and engaged, and it was after lunch, and I appreciate it. So my encouragement to you guys moving forward is just, I'm a huge believer in cultivating a little white space inside of ourselves. And I think especially in the roles that you guys play professionally, the momentum, just the vastness of the checklist and to-do list can be overwhelming. And so my encouragement to you is take a breath. I mean, put your finger to your thumb for a second throughout just a few times a day and give that to yourself, because self-awareness is a gift. It is a gift that you can give yourself. It's a way to expand and grow and be a better you. So thank you guys. Thanks for having me. I'll bring David back up.